Welcome to my World History Notes, where normally I read from the book I wrote to teach homeschoolers world history. A Bible believer looks at world history. Um, you can purchase it on lulu.com, amazon.com, or the Bible Baptist bookstore. But today, for a couple of times of a special topic, a little bit of extra study I did because something interested me, and I hope that you'll be interested too. Talking about the Russian Revolution, the background of it, and things like that, because it was a significant part of the 20th century. It played an important part in the 20th century. Eventually, the Cold War, a lot of proxy wars, including wars like Vietnam and wars in Africa. So let's. I'm going to continue with that, finish that, get back into the book. So if you'll bear with me, if you have the book and you've been following along, just apologize, but we'll just deviate for a little while. So now I want to start with Karl Marx, who was another German philosopher who would heavily influence later revolutionaries, like Adam Weishaupt did, the Decembrists. His view of the future included the abolition, abolishment of traditional marriage and the eliminating of private property. His Communist Manifesto is a landmark work outlining what he expected and demanded to happen in industrial societies. The idea of a classless, egalitarian society was discussed in ancient Greece and Rome by eminent philosophers like Plato and Aristotle, Cicero, and Tacitus. There were such movements throughout ancient history. Marx, a radical journalist in the 1840s, became absorbed onto the rich history of the communist movement. Now, communist was possibly coined by the word communist by the French author Victor Dupay in his 1779 work, Project for a Philosophical Community, although it's reported that the word was first used in a letter in 1782. Still, the book of Acts of the Bible, the many movements for an egalitarian society without classes throughout history, the turmoil of the successful colonial rebellion in America against Great Britain, in Haiti against France, and in Latin America against Spain, the French Revolution, and movements in France itself were part of this desire for reform and for the elimination of the ancien regime, of all tradition and authority that had gone before. Marxism is about the overthrow of the existing order and institutions of a country, and its replacement with a classless society consisting of a gray, faceless mush of humanity subject to an all-powerful elite, an Illuminati, if you will, that guides your destiny. Marx saw it as inevitable. The Decembrist revolt resulted in rebels being sent to Siberia for punishment, and the reforms and modernization started by Peter the Great ended by Tsar Nicholas. Russian revolutionaries after the Decembrist revolt include Alexander Herzen, who wrote while in exile in London to influence events in Russia. He is known as the father of Russian socialism. He admired the French Revolution and saw it as the end of history. Mikhail Petroszewski was an influential utopian social theorist whose circle of intellectuals that met at his apartment included the writer of Crime and Punishment, Fyodor Dostoevsky. Petroszewski would later be sentenced to death, which would be commuted at the last minute, and then he was exiled to Siberia. The rigidity of the Tsarist government after the Decembrist revolt had caused a constant tension between the government and society, particularly the educated intelligentsia, exemplified by the Petroszewski Circle. Russian revolutionary groups focused on Russia's peasants, seen for their untapped potential in opposing the ruling class. This included two large populist groups. One was called Land and Liberty, and one was known as the Call of the People. The People's Will group, espousing terrorism and violence, would eventually succeed those previous ones. The People's Will managed to assassinate Tsar Alexander II in 1881. The murder of this reformist czar set actual reform back as Russia descended even more into a police state, with reforms reversed and oppressions magnified. For the next 2 decades, political groups that opposed the elites were suppressed. Members of this group, who had not been executed but exiled to Siberia, would help form the Social Revolutionary Party. The first great leader of communist Russia's brother was a member of a wing of the People's Will group, and we'll pick that up next and get started with these origins of the Russian Revolution and go through the revolution. So probably have maybe two more times on this topic and get back into the book. So in any event, I hope it interests you to do some digging and looking. It's amazing how things are connected in history. Have a great day.